Hello everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join in. Alright, this is what we're going to be doing today. We just have a simple line here. Up here in the published parameters, we have got 3 speed options to choose from. So 1 is just an ease in, ease out, and option 2 and option 3 are custom speed curves, the kind of option that is not available directly in the write-on behavior. We also have duration controls here, which is another feature not directly available in the write-on behavior. So we have 3 different animation style options and a choice of 1 or 2 seconds to run. This is going to be a short lesson about rigging the source of the link behavior. And the reason we want to do that is to create our own custom solutions when the regular tools we have available in Motion aren't quite what we need. In this case, we're looking at the write-on behavior. As you can see, with this method, we're going to set speed controls by snapshots on a pop-up menu that we then publish to Final Cut. We're not going to use a slider. Eventually, I will cover how to do this with the slider instead, but that's for another time. The methods we cover today are a part of that solution, so we are definitely moving a step closer to that. The main point of this lesson is to introduce you to the idea that you can rig the source of a link behavior. This allows you to make templates that you create in Motion for Final Cut Pro much more functional, adaptable, and versatile for the end user. So let's jump into Motion and have a look at what I mean by the source. Alright, I have a project here in Motion and I have this drop zone selected. In the inspector, this feature is where we apply the source. In this case, it's the source media for the drop zone. When we enter the menu, you can see that we can apply the source to a rig, to a checkbox, a pop-up, or a slider. An image mask has the same source function. In this case, the mask source. This cell of a replicator has a source. And so does the replicator if you are working from geometry or image mode. Emitter cells have a source. And also the emitter if you're working from geometry or image mode. Here's a few examples of behaviors which have sources. The point at behavior, motion path, and align to behavior all have sources. And also clones. Now there's a link in the description for a lesson by Simon Ubsdel which takes you through a good practical application of rigging the clone source. Generally in Motion, if a tool has a source, you can rig it, and that opens the door to many possibilities. Today's lesson though is all about rigging the source of the link behavior. I'll just turn off these elements. We'll take a quick look at the principle. This link here assigns the position of the white layer to the orange circle. And if we look at this pop-up widget here, you can see that I've applied the source of the link behavior to the widget. So currently the orange layer is the source for the link. When I change to the next widget snapshot, you can see that the link source is swapped to the blue layer on the right. So the linked layer will move to that location. So swapping between the snapshots and the pop-up changes the location of the linked layer. Okay, I'll delete the widget and delete the link. We'll start over so I can show you the steps involved. I'll grab the white layer and add a link for position. Then I'll drag in the left position layer as the source. In the rig, I'm going to add a pop-up widget and rename the snaps to left and right. We don't need the third snapshot, so we can delete it. Okay, with the snapshot set to left, you can see that the link source is the left layer. I'll name the widget as location. From this menu, we're going to assign the link source to the widget that we just set up. Now in the widget, I will change the snapshot state from left to right and assign a new source to that snap, the blue layer on the right. Alright, we've assigned the link source to a widget. We gave the widget 2 snapshots. Then we assign to each snapshot a different link source. So changing the snapshot changes the source, and the linked layer will swap position. So from here, we're going to look at the same principle to create custom speed and custom duration controls, to create a solution for some of the limitations of the write-on behavior. As we are on the topic of rigging, I'd like to remind you that the number one resource to learn about rigging and get a good foundation in that knowledge is Ripple Training. And I've put a link in the description for their rigging and publishing course, which is really worth your time. Alright, I'm in a new project here. It's a 4K project, 3840 by 2160 at 30 frames a second, 10 seconds duration. I've added optional build-in and build-out markers at the 2-second range on either side of the project. As you can see, I've added a line layer. To animate lines, we use the offsets. We can keyframe these offsets directly to create the speed curve for the animation. We can also animate these offsets with behaviors. The ramp behavior and the write-on behavior are two of the most common tools we would use for this. The write-on behavior is often the better choice, because that behavior is dedicated to animating paths, so it has more features available. When we apply the write-on behavior, you can see that the behavior acts on those offsets. In the inspector, we can see that the write-on behavior has lots of features for animating the line. That includes speed controls. We have a lot of default options to choose. We have ease in, ease out, ease both, accelerate and decelerate. But if we want to set a speed curve outside of those defaults, we would use the custom speed option. The custom speed option allows us to keyframe the parameter so that we can create any animation speed curve that we want. Now, if we want to create a custom speed selection for the end user in Final Cut, one path that we could take is to put the speed curve onto a widget and assign different speed curves to snapshots. Another option would be to link the parameter and then assign the link source to a widget, and on that widget we would put various null objects that will supply those custom speed curves. We're not going to look at those options today. That's something we'll do in later lessons. What we'll do today is link the offsets directly to null layers, then rig the link source to multiple null objects so that we can publish a selection for Final Cut Pro. So let's get started with that. I'll get rid of the link and the behavior and start over with just the line. I'll rename the line as number 1 and rename this group as speed nulls. I'm going to duplicate the line, name it number 2, give it a different color. We're using nulls here, so a different color helps to see what's happening. I'll set the location of point 1 to 0 and leave point 2 at 1000. Then I'll move the group up in the project and move number 2 below number 1 so that we can tell it apart. Now I'll duplicate number 2, name it number 3, and give it a new color. Then drop it down so that we can see it. Now with null number 1, I'm going to keyframe the last point offset directly to create a speed curve. I'll keyframe it over 2 seconds and just use the ease both preset. Then for null 2, we'll keyframe the last point offset directly with a different speed curve, and we're going to create a speed curve that is not available in the default write-on behavior options. Something like this. And we'll do the same for number 3. Again, we're going to make a speed curve that is not available directly in the write-on behavior options. Okay, so now we have 3 lines that will act as null layers. Each of them has its own animation speed curve. The speed curves for 2 and 3 are not options that are available in the default selections for the write-on behavior. We could make them in the write-on behavior directly with the custom speed setting, but we're going to use nulls, link to the nulls, rig that link source so that we can create a pop-up menu for selection in Final Cut Pro. Now I'm going to duplicate number 3, put it in its own group, and move that group under the nulls. I'll name this group Graphic and rename the layer to Line. This will be the visible layer in the template. The nulls would be turned off so they can't be seen. Reset the line position and we'll increase the line thickness. Set the color to white. Then set the location of point 1 to -1000. I'll reset the animation on the last point offset, then add a link behavior. I'll name that link last point offset null. I'll add null 1 as the source, and like we did before, we're now going to add this to a pop-up widget. I'll name the rig to speed and the widget to speed. Then rename the 3 default snapshots to 1, 2, and 3. Set the snapshot to number 2. Just going to give null 1 a different color. Back to the widget, which is set to number 2, I'll add null 2 as the source. Then for snapshot 3, I'll add number 3. So with this widget, we can swap the link source between 1, 2, and 3. Let's have a quick check. In snap number 1, the line has an ease in and ease out. In snap number 2, we have the first custom speed curve, and number 3 runs another custom speed curve. Now at this point, if all we wanted to do was to create a custom speed selection, this is as far as we would need to go. We could just publish that pop-up widget for use in Final Cut. But as we saw at the beginning of this lesson, we are going to go further. We're going to add a basic duration control as well. The first step here is to convert this line that runs for 2 seconds into another null. This will be the null that supplies the 2-second duration option. I'll rename the graphic group as Timing and rename the line as null 2 seconds. Then rename that speed layers group as null 2 seconds. I'll change the name of the pop-up widget to speed 2 seconds. Then add another pop-up widget to the rig and name that speed 1 second. I'll set up snapshots 1, 2, and 3 like we did before. Then I'm going to duplicate the speed nulls group and name this group nulls 1 second. I'll move it over to the left so we can tell them apart. Now in the bottom layers here, I'm going to grab each of the last keyframes and move them down to 1 second. Now all of the speed curves are still the same, but they're just running for 1 second instead of 2. So we have one group of nulls running for 1 second and another group of nulls running for 2. Now I need to duplicate this 2-second null layer. I'll rename it to null 1 second and update the link names accordingly. Now I need to remove this link from the first widget. You can see that because I've duplicated the link, the source has been added automatically to the first widget. I'll just remove it through this menu. Then assign the source to the new widget we just set up. I'll assign null1 to snap1, null2 to snap2, and null3 to snap3. I'll move the 1 second null above the 2 second one. And I'll give it another colour. Same for the other one. So our new duration null is running on the 1 second speed nulls. And our 2 second null is running on the 2 second speed. Now I'll add another line to serve as the graphic. I'll set the x value for point 1 to -1000 and the value for point 2 at 1000. And reset the position. Then I'll move it below the nulls. Actually, I want it in its own group. I'll move that group out of the timing group and move it down in the Layers panel to sit below all of the nulls. I'll name this group Graphic, then move the Y position down to sit below the nulls. I'll turn off the line caps, increase the line thickness. Now we're going to add a link to the last point offset. And I'll name the link as Timing. Then we'll add the link source to a new pop-up on a new rig. I'll name the rig and the widget as Timing. I'll rename the first 2 snapshots as 1 second and 2 seconds, and delete the third snapshot that we don't need. I'll add the 1 second duration null to the 1 second snapshot, then the 2 second duration null to the 2 second snapshot. Then I'll publish that widget. Next, I'll go to the speed rig and add a new pop-up. I'll name it Speed Pub, which means this is the widget that I'll publish for speed. Just like the other speed widgets, I'm going to have 3 snapshots named 1, 2, and 3. Now select the 1 second speed widget and drag this section onto the Speed Pub widget. Then do the same for the 2 second speed widget. Now back to the Speed Pub widget, we now have those snapshots for the Speed 1 second and Speed 2 seconds widgets. All we need to do now is make sure that all of the values at each snap match up. So for snap 1 on the pub widget, it's snap 1 for the other 2. The same for snap 2 and 3. Now we'll publish the Speed Pub widget. Now in the inspector, in the Publish Parameters section, we can see our 2 pop-up menus. I'm going to rename Speed Pub as Speed and move it above the timing one. Let's turn off the null layers so they're not visible. and turn the link on the line layer on. The source is currently assigned to the 1 second duration null. Now we need to update the source parameter to Object, Shape, Outline, Last Point Offset. Let's have a quick look at the result. With the 2 pop-up menus that we've published, the end user has a choice of 3 speed curves, and they can choose between a duration of 1 second or 2 seconds for them to run. I'll just do a quick check to make sure that all of the speed curves are working correctly with each duration option. Okay, everything is working fine. Generally, in Motion, when we want to give instructions to a parameter to animate it, and then allow those instructions to be updated in Final Cut Pro, we need to use behaviors. However, for shape layers, like the line that we animated here, there is no way to directly provide custom speed curves and duration control all at the same time. What we've done here is use the principle of rigging a link source to get around those limitations and create our own custom solution. In the next lesson, we're going to look at another application of rigging the link source. Thanks for taking the time to join in, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.